Duncan Leadley Anderson, born October 17, 1892. He was the son of Annie and John H. Anderson, born in Torrey Hill. He was buried in France, June 18, 1918. He died of meningitis.
Benjamin Byrd, born May 7, 1881. 66th Battalion, Canadian Expeditionary Force. Haliburton, Ontario is where he was born. He was killed in action in the Battle of Somme between September 15th and 16th, 1916. Son of John Byrd of Haliburton, Ontario.
Arthur Bishop was born December 18, 1894. He was part of the 2nd Battalion, Canadian Infantry. He passed away on May 5, 1917 at the age of 22, and he was killed in action. He's buried at the Vimy Memorial, Pas-de-Calais, France.
George Bowers was born June 1st, 1890. His hometown was Harcourt, Ontario. He enlisted in January 16, 1916. He was killed in action during the Battle of Canal du Nord on September 28, 1918.
Walter Stanley Bowron was born January 25, 1889, and he died August 9, 1917. His hometown was Minden, Ontario, and he was the son of Anthony and Lucinda Bowron of Minden. He was buried at Luce British Cemetery, Pas-de-Calais, France.
William Kernahan, born June 12, 1897, part of the 21st Battalion of the Canadian Infantry, hometown Haliburton, Ontario. He was killed in action in the Battle of Arras, May 3, 1918. Son of William Reed and Janet Kernahan.
Edward Cole, born August 21, 1896, part of the Canadian Infantry. Hometown Lachlan, Ontario. Died of wounds on the Battle of Hill 70 on August 28, 1918.
Edward Cox was born October 29, 1896. He was part of the 38th Battalion, and he was killed in action in Vimy Ridge. His hometown is Minden, Ontario, and he was buried at the Givenchy Canadian Cemetery, Pas-de-Calais in France.
Herbert Cox, the brother of Edward Cox, was born on October 15, 1890. He was killed in action at Vimy Ridge fighting for the 20th Battalion of the Canadian Infantry. His hometown was Minden, Ontario, and he passed away on April 10, 1917. He was buried at the Vimy Memorial in Pas-de-Calais, France.
Frederick Cross, born May 7, 1886, deceased September 15, 1916, killed in action Battle of the Somme, hometown Lachlan, Ontario, son of Charles Henry and Mary Cross of Lachlan, Ontario, buried at Vimy Ridge.
Russell S. Curry was born on September 28, 1896, and grew up in Haliburton, Ontario. Russell was the son of Mr. and Mrs. Andrew J. Curry of Haliburton, Ontario. Russell S. Curry was killed in action at the Battle of Arras on August 9, 1917.
George Stack was born on September 28, 1888, in Torrey Hill, Haliburton County, Ontario. He was a part of the 20th Battalion, Canadian Infantry. George Stack was killed in action at the Battle of Arras, May 9, 1917. He was buried at the Vimy Memorial, Pas-de-Calais, France.
Percy Gaynor was born October 25, 1885, in the hometown of Minden, Ontario. He was killed in action August 26, 1918, in the Battle of Scarpe. He was a part of the 59th Battalion, Canadian Expeditionary Force. He was the son of Miss Betsy Gaynor of Minden, Ontario.
Richard Gregory, born April 2, 1888, grew up in Haliburton, Ontario, son of William and Anne Gregory, deceased November 22, 1916, age 31, died of wounds in the Battle of Somme, buried in Berlin Commanuel Cemetery in France.
Robert Groves was born February 16, 1888, and grew up in Haliburton. Robert was killed in action during the Third Battle of Ypres on Christmas Day, 1917. He is buried in France and was the husband of Mary Groves.
Arthur Harrison, born September 18, 1896. son of Miss Margaret Harrison of Carnarvon, Ontario. He was killed in action in the Battle of Canal du Nord. He died September 27, 1918, aged 21.
Joseph Henderson was born on August 7, 1877. He enlisted for service in April 15, 1916. He died on January 27, 1919. Cause of death, influenza. His hometown was Blairhampton, Ontario, and he was married to Maggie Henderson.
Milton Hobden, born July 26, 1893. Son of Henry and Anne Jane Hobden, husband of Laura May Hobden. Hometown, Minden, Ontario. He was killed in action on April 9, 1917 at Vimy Ridge.
Joseph Howe was born April 2nd, 1896. Joseph was a part of the 2nd Battalion Canadian Infantry, Eastern Ontario Regiment. He died of his wounds on August 9, 1918 at the age of 22 during the Battle of Amiens, son of Joseph A. and Eva Howe of Kinmount, Ontario. Joseph Howe is buried at the Croix British Cemetery in France.
George Hunter was born August 12, 1894. He was killed in action in the Battle of Amiens. His hometown was Gooderham, Ontario. He was the son of John J. and Alice Hunter of Gooderham. He is buried in the cemetery of the Somme in France.
George Leverington was born December 23, 1881, and died of wounds in the Third Battle of Ypres on September 11, 1917. His hometown was Gooderham, Ontario, and he's buried in the Barlin Communal Cemetery, Pas-de-Calais, France.
James Lewis was born July 29, 1892. He was part of the 21st Battalion and he was killed in action in the Battle of Hill 70. His hometown is Minden, Ontario.
Samuel Little, born April 14, 1888, part of the 8th Battalion, hometown, Minden, Ontario. He was paralyzed from the waist down due to grenade shrapnel injury. He died sometime after March 10, 1918.
George Logan, born June 2nd, 1890, deceased April 9th, 1917. Killed in action, Battle of Vimy Ridge, rank private, hometown Haliburton, Ontario.
Corporal Bruce McKnight, born March 5, 1891, part of the 9th Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force, killed in action, 2nd Battle of Ypres, June 15, 1915.
Ashton Moore was born September 29, 1896, in Gellert, Ontario. He was killed in action August 16, 1918, in the Battle of Langemalk, son of Sarah Moore of Gellert, Ontario.
Leslie Reynolds was born on June 6, 1893, in Minden, Ontario. He was the son of James Reynolds of Minden, Ontario. On May 9, 1917, Leslie was killed at the Battle of Arras. Leslie Reynolds was buried at the Vimy Memorial.
Maddox Scott was born September 23, 1893, in Gellert, Ontario. He enlisted on May 28, 1916, and was killed in action on October 11, 1918.
Edgar Stamp, born March 1886, from Minden, Ontario, deceased September 27, 1918, died of wounds.
William Valentine was born February 17, 1891. He was killed in action in the Battle of Arras, and his hometown is Haliburton, Ontario.
Donald Watt, born October 18, 1890. He was the son of Miss Carrie Watt of Haliburton, Ontario. He was killed in action in the Battle of Amiens, August 8, 1918.
Charles Welch was born February 26, 1893. He was killed in action in the Battle of Arras, January 17, 1917. His hometown was Halls Lake, Minden, Ontario. He's the son of James Welch of Halls Lake, Ontario. He is buried in Moorrock British Cemetery.
Harry Welch, brother of Charles Welch, was born on October 8, 1897. He died on May 9, 1917, in the Battle of Arras. His hometown was Halls Lake, Ontario, and he was the son of James Welch of Halls Lake, Ontario.
Hilliard Wood was born September 2, 1896. Hilliard was part of the 21st Battalion Canadian Infantry Eastern Ontario Regiment, son of Joseph and Louisa Wood of Port Hope, brother of Bertha Sarah A. Hugh, Charles and David Wadsworth Wood.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Jack Anderson, born 1912, son of Rose and Edith Anderson, husband of Thelda Mary Anderson. Buried at Attigam Canadian War Cemetery, Belgium. Deceased September 4th, 1944, age 32.
Lyle Boyce was born in 1922. Lyle was a sergeant in the Highlanders RCIC. He was the son of Bert and Ethel Boyce of West Guildford, Ontario. Lyle was killed in action November 26, 1944. He's buried in the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands.
Leslie Burke was born in 1900 in Lachlan, Ontario, and died July 6, 1940 at the age of 40. He was the son of Alex and Florence Amanda Burke, and the husband of Elizabeth Smith Burke. He's buried in the UK.
Arthur Carnahan was born in Haliburton, Ontario, and passed away on March 12, 1945. He was buried in the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands.
Elmer Vincent Covert, born 1924, killed in action in Hitler Lane, Rome, Italy. Hometown Highland Grove, Ontario. Deceased May 29, 1944, age 20.
Burn Cowan, born 1924. Deceased in action July 8, 1944, age 20. Hometown Maple Lake, Ontario. Son of William and Henry Vera Cowan.
Floyd Ross Davidson, born 1919 in Haliburton, Ontario, son of Thomas and Ellen Davidson of Haliburton, Ontario. He was a lieutenant with the Southern Highlanders of Canada, and he was killed in action January 29, 1945 in Holland at age 26.
Richard Dawson was born in 1942 and was killed in action on July 25, 1944 at the age of 22. His hometown was Maple Lake, Ontario, and he was the son of Milton and Berta Dawson of Maple Lake, Ontario.
William Richard Burt Fielding, son of Edward Burt Fielding and Anna Amelia Fielding of Inglesby, Ontario. Killed in training, Montreal, Quebec. Hometown, Inglesby, Ontario.
Marvin Harrison was born in 1924. Marvin was a private in the Black Watch Royal Canadian Regiment. He is the son of Norman and Velma Mary Harrison and husband of Grace Marie June Harrison of Haliburton, Ontario. Marvin was killed in action on November 1st, 1944. He's buried in the Bergen op Zoom Canadian Cemetery in the Netherlands.
Elsie Henderson was born May 15, 1910 in Haliburton, Ontario. He died December 25, 1941 at the age of 31 at the Battle of Hong Kong. He was the brother of Rebecca McCracken, the son of Joseph and Margaret Henderson, the husband of Margaret Henderson, and is buried in Victoria, Hong Kong.
Lyle Horsley, born 1925 and grew up in Haliburton, Ontario. He was killed in action in Holland on February 18, 1945 at the age of 20. He was the son of Roy and Hazel Horsley in Haliburton, Ontario.
Irvin Leslie Howe, deceased July 7, 1945, Belgium, died of wounds from accident, hometown West Guildford, Ontario.
Russell LaRue, hometown Haliburton, Ontario, deceased May 23, 1944, killed in action in Italy.
Max McCracken was born in Haliburton, Ontario to William and Rebecca McCracken in 1925. He was a private in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. He died on February 28, 1945 at the age of 20. Max McCracken is buried at the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands.
James Nichols, born 1906 in the 49th Battalion as a sapper of the Royal Canadian Engineers, buried in Bracebridge Cemetery, deceased February 23, 1943 in Italy.
Donald Pasquino was born in 1922. Donald was a Lance Sergeant in the Highlander RCIC. He was the son of Samuel Stephen and Deborah Henderson Pasquino of Donald, Ontario. Donald was killed in action October 16, 1944. He's buried in the Adjugum Canadian War Cemetery in Belgium.
James Redner, born 1917, son of Thomas Mark and Mary Ann Redner of Carnarvon, Ontario, buried Brookwood Military Cemetery, United Kingdom, deceased April 24, 1942 at the age of 25.
George Swanton was born in 1925 in Maple Lake, Ontario. He was killed in action on August 18, 1944 at the age of 19. He's buried at the Ranville War Cemetery in France.
Walter Albert Wynne, born in 1920 in Haliburton, Ontario. He died July 20, 1944 in France and was part of the Dundas and Glengarry Highlanders.
James Wright was born in Irondale, Ontario in 1921. He was in the Royal Canadian Artillery. James Wright was killed in action in Italy on September 4, 1944.
John Hartle was born August 8, 1924, and was killed in Bermuda on February 28, 1951. His hometown was Minden, Ontario, and he enlisted on August 10, 1942.